Dreams Talk Radio Network brings you the World Paranormal News with James Creechbaum. Now, the latest news.
This is Night Dreams Talk Radio Network News, and I'm James Creechbaum. What should we do if a planet-killer asteroid takes aim at Earth? Researchers at MIT calculated which option is best depending on the asteroid and its path through space. If a giant object looks like it's going to slam into Earth, humanity has a few options. Hammer it with a spacecraft hard enough to knock it off course, blast it with nuclear weapons, tug on it with a gravity tractor, or even slow it down with using concentrated sunlight. Along the path near Earth, it has keyholes, and those keyholes are regions of space that it has to pass through in order to end up on a collision course during its next approach to our planet. Now, the keyhole is like a door. Once it's open, the asteroid will impact Earth soon after with high probability. The easiest time to stop an object from hitting Earth is before it hits one of those keyholes. That will keep the object from getting on the route toward the impact in the first place. Ancient tree with record of Earth's magnetic field reversal is in the rings that it was discovered. Scientists have uncovered an ancient tree that lived during a time in Earth's history when the magnetic field almost completely reversed. This pole reversal has happened periodically throughout Earth's history, sometimes lasting for a few thousand years, sometimes for over 30 million years. The last time the Earth's poles nearly flipped completely was about 41,000 years ago. Whatever's going on with Betelgeuse just got a lot weirder. The excitement over a possible Betelgeuse supernova was caused by the star beginning to mysteriously dim. Some folks believe that this dimming was the beginning of the star's death throes. Once it burns out enough fuel, it will collapse. As it collapses in on itself, the extreme pressure will cause a reignition, too powerful to be held together by the dying star's gravity, and it will explode in a supernova. Yet new images of Betelgeuse show something bizarre. Only part of the star is dimming. Astronomers are mystified as to what could be causing this partial dimming. Betelgeuse is an old star, and it burns some 2,000 degrees Celsius colder than our sun. Beyond just a partial dimming, it looks as if Betelgeuse is dramatically changed shape in a very short period of time. An abandoned school security guard heard voices in a closed-caption TV spots a ghost. Surveillance video of an apparent ghost was taken at an empty school after the security heard the voices of children in the early hours and called police to investigate. The clip amazed fellow believers and said it was definitely a real ghost and not a bug, as it often is the case with these paranormal videos. Next news break tomorrow evening.
From our compound, from the West Coast to the East Coast to worldwide, both on the internet and terrestrial radio, you're listening to Gary Anderson on Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark.
And we are back with a great guest, Whitley Strieber. We're talking about his new book. Whitley, when the guy came out and checked your alarm system, did he also check out the electronics and all this other stuff? Did he find anything strange?
No. Well, we did find one thing strange. When he downloaded the system's records, they were all garbled for that night. It was like they had been garbled. So they didn't make any sense. They didn't show anything. But as he pointed out, they wouldn't have showed any entries and exits anyway because the system hadn't reacted.
Interesting.
It had been. But anyway, let me go on with what happened next, because the next afternoon, my ear started hurting, and I felt it, and I felt this lump in the top part of my ear that hadn't been there before. And And I knew about implants by then. There were no secret. We'd even done some testing ourselves of people, and Roger Lear was already active, so it was no secret. And I said to Annie, my God, those people last night put an implant in my ear. And she felt it and said, well, let's see if we can figure out how it works. And I said, you figure out how it works. I want it out of my ear now. And we argued about it, but she was, I respected Anne's intelligence tremendously. She was a genius. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I said to her, she said, you need to first, let's build some groundwork here. Let's figure out if we can understand this thing. And I went on for years, a couple of years. I thought about getting Roger to take it out, Roger Lear, but she would refuse to let me do that. And then we moved to Texas, and I happened to find a doctor who had a little practice there. And I also, by that time, had met Dr. William Mallow, the head of materials science at Southwest Research. And the implant had been turning on from time to time. And when it did turn on, my ear would turn bright red, and sometimes you could hear a kind of grinding noise, sort of a hissing noise in it. But you could definitely, I was in his office once, and he knew about the implant. Of course, he was trying every way he could to get me to get it taken out so he could study it. And it suddenly turns on in his office. My ear turns bright red. He gets very excited, of course, and rushes me into a signals acquisition lab on the Southwest Research campus.
Oh, wow.
And so we do a signal scan on the thing, and I am told, he calls me up and afterwards and tells me we did find a signal. And then he won't tell me anything more about the signal. 20 years pass. I'm at a book fair in San Antonio, their annual book fair, and I'm one of the authors. And after my talk is over, there's a crowd of people around me, and I'm talking to them. A couple of guys show up, and one of them says, we were involved in the signals acquisition on your implant, Whitley, and we just want you to know it remains the most unusual signal that has been acquired, and it's deeply classified, and they turned around and left.
Oh, wow.
And now, fast forward to, well, that happened in 2016, I think, in 2016. So by that time, I was already beginning to learn to use the implant, because after Annie passed away, I suddenly did learn to use the implant, and I use it all the time now. It is the most valuable tool in my life of research and communication. It's just extraordinary. Now, here's the final piece of this puzzle, and it's absolutely amazing. So fasten your seatbelts, folks. I'm writing the book, and the visitors have already made it clear it's got to be published no later than November the 15th. And they've wanted it earlier in October and then it's in September. And no way can I even give it to a publisher, because it'll take a publisher a year to publish it. And then I'm still writing as late as September and then October. And then a doctor who studies implants convinces me to get a CT scan of my ear so he can at least see it. And he'd love me to have it taken out, frankly. I mean, she's about the fifth one, both on the classified and the unclassified side, who have wanted that implant. So I'm going to get the CT scan on a Thursday. Tuesday at 4 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock at the door. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the physical part of my relationship with the visitors. I've already explained that it's very rare, but it's not zero, as I talked about earlier. But this kind of thing, where there's a knock at the door, is pretty rare. And there's something about it that tells me who it is. Let me put it that way, and I'm not going to go into what that is because I don't want someone to come up here and try that. And I can conceive that they might try to fool me, and I might open the door onto someone I don't want to be in here.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This happens. I immediately go to the door and open it. And it's not one of the little grays there. It's two people, one of whom I recognize. I saw him last when he was age 12. And again, I'm talking to the edge of what I can talk about. Suffice to say, the reason I knew him at the age of 12 is because of something. He's a human person, and he's in an unusual program, let me put it that way. And another man is with him. Of course I invite them in. Then they come in, and as they come in, my state changes. In other words, I get into a state, I don't know, some of your listeners have probably had twilight sleep when they were having a minor surgery, like a minor surgery on a sensitive area like the eye, but they don't have to have full anesthesia, or maybe a bunion removal, they'll give you twilight sleep. And that was what it was like, but I was still ambulatory. I didn't fall over or anything. I wasn't entirely able to, I couldn't have touched them. I couldn't have done anything. And I think it was probably done not with drugs, but with hypnosis. They then proceed to explain the implant to me and to basically ask me not to have it removed, is what happened. And he mentions that it was designed by a Dr. Rawdive, he says. And he explains how it doesn't, what happens with the implant is it opens a slit up in my right eye, and you can see words flashing past in the slit. And if you watch closely, you can occasionally see one of the words, but not much. Mostly you can't. They're too fast. He explained that what was happening was that this was bringing thoughts that were deep in my unconscious to what he called my middle consciousness, where they became subliminal but accessible to my conscious mind. And it was, in other words, it was making my mind much richer because material that I've forgotten, that's filed away, that I only didn't remember at all, is all coming up to the conscious level, or to this middle consciousness, and then being accessed by my conscious mind. It's like having a super thesaurus or something. It was just wonderful, and I realized what this. He explained something of how it worked, but he didn't understand it very well himself. And they left after that, and I sat and meditated again, and I didn't sleep much after that. I was pretty excited. I did go on Google and Googled this name, Rawdive, Raudive, because it sounded very vaguely familiar to me. And as soon as I Googled it, I remembered who this was. It was Konstantin Raudive, the EVP pioneer, he pioneered electronic voice communication with the dead and continued after his death to communicate using EVP with people on this side. And he had designed this incredibly while he is on the other side. Now, here's the most extraordinary little bit of information about this. I immediately went on my website asking people, have you had this slit? Do you have this? And a friend of mine wrote me back. I didn't say anything about Konstantin Raudive on the website. Wrote me back and said, yes, Whitley, I've always wondered about that. I have that too. It's in my eye, and I can see it if I'm looking against a white wall, and there are words racing past. Here's the incredible thing. He is one of the leading experts on Konstantin Raudive and has done a documentary about him.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, my God, what am I seeing here? This is like a vision into an incredibly deep secret. And of course it started working better after Anne died.